The chains of silence. The red sky of Virelon 3 burned like dying fire. Ash clouds floated above the broken cities, where slaves walked with chains and tired eyes for years. The Thalcran Dominion ruled this planet with iron claws. They came in black ships, took the weak, and made them build fortresses for their warlords. No one spoke against them, because those who did were never seen again. Among those prisoners was a small alien girl named Lura. Her skin pale blue, her eyes once bright, now dull with hunger and fear. She worked every day carrying metal parts under the heat of 2 suns. Her mother used to tell her stories about the stars, about beings who helped others, but that was before the Thalcran came. Before the soldiers dragged her mother away, now silence ruled the planet. Even the wind carried no laughter. Only the sound of machinery and pain. The Thalcran guards walked tall, their armor glowing red, their weapons humming. They treated the slaves like insects, shouting orders, laughing when someone fell, and every night the same question whispered through the camps. Will no one come to help us? Far away, deep beneath the ruins of an old mining tower, an ancient transmitter flickered. It had been hidden for decades, left by the first colonists who once dreamed of peace. One of the older slaves, a quiet engineer named Ral, found it while digging. His hands shook as he brushed away the dust. The small screen blinked alive for the first time in years. He didn't know if it would work, but he pressed the signal button anyway. A faint light blinked blue, a simple distress code, SOS. The message shot upward through the thick clouds, past the orbiting Thalcran stations. It was small, almost invisible, but it escaped into space. No one noticed it, not the guards, not the command ships, only the stars. And among those stars, something began to move. Something vast and silent. Lura didn't know about the signal. All she knew was that her people were dying slowly, that the masters told them humanity was gone, that the Terrans were extinct long ago, but she always wondered if it was true. Her mother used to whisper, "Humans are different, child. They fight for those who cannot." Lura never forgot those words. That night when the moons rose pale and high, strange things started to happen. The Thalcran scanners began to fail. Static filled the command center. Their officers shouted, "Find the source!" But the systems kept blinking with errors. One of the radar screens flashed white, then dark, then white again. Something enormous was entering the edge of the system, but it had no identification, no trade code, no diplomatic tag, just a silent pattern, a line of approaching ships moving in perfect formation. The Dominion General, Vorthak, watched from his war station. He had crushed many rebellions before, burned planets to silence. But as he looked at the strange readings, a cold feeling touched his spine. The signals looked old, ancient even, but too precise. He zoomed in, trying to analyze the drive signatures. Then one word appeared on the translation screen: Terran. The bridge fell silent. No one spoke, no one laughed, not even the arrogant Vorthak, because every Thalcran knew that word. They had studied human history, their wars, their destruction, their will to fight, and they knew what it meant when a Terran fleet moved without a word. Down below, the slaves felt the ground rumble. The sky shimmered as if the air itself feared what was coming. Lura looked up and saw blue lightning dancing across the horizon. The guards shouted orders, thinking it was just another storm. But the airship alarm started screaming, and every Thalcran helmet blinked red warnings. The stars above flickered, and then, for the first time in centuries, the enslaved saw light. Not fire, not bombs, but silver trails cutting through the sky. Ships, hundreds of them, entering orbit, their hulls dark and sharp, carrying symbols no one had seen for generations. The Earth insignia. Lura whispered softly, "Humans." Her voice trembling with both fear and hope. The slaves gathered outside, watching as thunder rolled through the atmosphere. The Thalcran warships lifted off to meet the invaders, their engines screaming, but even from the ground, anyone could see the difference. The human fleet moved with deadly calm, like hunters who already knew the outcome high above. One human officer looked at the burning planet below. His face was cold, his voice steady. "Mark the targets," he said. "Prepare for Operation Dawnfire," another officer replied. "Admiral, are they confirmed slavers?" The man nodded slowly. "Confirmed. Every one of them." A silence followed, broken only by the soft hum of Terran engines. Then the command came. "For the innocent, burn the skies below." Lura saw streaks of white fire descend from the heavens. She covered her ears as thunder roared. The Thalkren command centers exploded, their towers collapsing in waves of fire. The chains that once held the slaves snapped under the shock waves. Dust filled the air, but through it, Lura saw something she would never forget. A massive ship, larger than mountains, glowing blue as it passed overhead. Its name written in ancient letters, TSS Vengeance. The people of Virelon 3 fell to their knees. The sky was burning, but it was not death they saw. It was freedom, and somewhere far above, a human voice whispered through the comms, "The innocent have suffered enough." The red sky turned gold, and for the first time in years, the chains of silence broke. The arrival of vengeance. The Thalkren sky patrols screamed through the red clouds. Their engines howled like beasts, their weapons charged and ready. They thought they could face the intruders as they had crushed 1,000 rebels before. But what waited above them was not rebellion, it was judgment. From orbit, the Terran Vengeance fleet drifted in silence. Hundreds of ships formed a dark wall across the stars. Each one bore scars from old wars, their hulls black as night. With blue light pulsing like a heartbeat, they moved as one, steady, calm, and terrifying. The main ship, TSS Vengeance, stood at the center like a giant of steel. Its command bridge was quiet, filled with human officers watching the planet below. Admiral Keon Vale stood before the main display, his eyes sharp and voice cold. "Confirm planetary status," he said. "All readings show slavery and suppression." The AI responded in a calm tone. "Confirmed, Admiral. 32 labor camps detected. Life signs in distress." Keon's hand clenched into a fist. "They think no one remembers the old codes," he whispered. Then he spoke louder. "Transmit this message to the Thalkren command. Across the planet." The enslaver's screens flickered to life. A human face appeared, calm, unreadable, his uniform dark with silver edges. "This is Admiral Vale of the Terran Vengeance Command," he said slowly. "By decree of the United Terran Charter, you are charged with enslavement of innocent species. You will stand down immediately, release all captives, and surrender your weapons so you have 5 minutes." The Thalkren Command Center exploded in laughter. Vorthak, the Dominion General, leaned forward with sharp teeth showing. "Humans," he hissed, "I thought your kind died screaming in your own wars." He turned to his officers. "Prepare the fleet. Burn them from the sky." Thousands of Thalkren ships launched at once. A storm of red plasma lit up the darkness. They believed their empire was still feared, that the Terrans were myths, but when their first shots hit, the human shields didn't even flicker. In return, the Vengeance fleet moved. No sound, no warning, only light, bright, white, pure destruction. Human railguns tore through enemy formations like they were made of paper. Plasma fire hit Terran armor and vanished in sparks. The sky turned into a dance of death, every beam marking the fall of a slaver. On the surface, Laura and the slaves saw the sky blaze open. They ran for cover. But some stopped to watch. It was too beautiful, too powerful. The alien guards screamed, calling for help, but their radios filled only with static. The Terran warships began precision strikes, targeting weapon factories and power grids. Each explosion brought freedom closer. Vorthak's command ship shook violently as a missile grazed its hull. He roared, "Target their flagship! Fire all cannons!" His crew obeyed, but their targeting systems refused to lock on. Every attempt failed. The Terran fleet moved too fast, too coordinated, and then from the darkness, a single voice echoed on all open channels. "For every chain you forged, for every life you broke, justice comes." Those words weren't shouted. They were whispered, but every species enslaved across the stars would remember them. A sudden light flashed across Vorthak's screen. The Terran flagship was descending, not retreating but entering the atmosphere. Its engines screamed through the clouds, cutting a path of fire and thunder. Even the ground trembled under its power. Inside the fortress city, the Thalkren soldiers ran to their defense towers. They fired everything they had, missiles, plasma, orbital beams, but the Terran shield shimmered like an invisible wall. Each shot absorbed and dissolved. Then, from the sky, smaller ships broke formation, black dropships diving through smoke and fire, each one carrying Terran soldiers, the Valkyrie troopers. Legends whispered in the old archives. Humans trained to fight in any gravity, any world, any hell. The first of them landed near the slave camp. The ground exploded as the drop pods opened. From within stepped soldiers in dark armor, their helmets shining blue in the dim light. They moved with purpose, no words, no hesitation. Their weapons glowed white as they cut through the guards like shadows. Lura hid behind a wall, her heart racing. She watched as a human trooper lifted his visor for a moment. Revealing kind eyes, he looked at her, then spoke softly. "You're safe now." His voice was calm. Almost gentle, he handed her a water packet. The first clean water she had ever tasted. Tears ran down her face as the world around her burned. Above them, the Terran fleet continued its assault. The enemy's last ships were falling apart. Scattering in panic, the humans didn't chase the fleeing ones. They only targeted those who refused to stop. The message was clear. Mercy was for the innocent, not for monsters. When the last enemy cruiser exploded, Admiral Vale stood silent. His officers waited for orders, but he didn't speak for a long time. He finally said, "Begin surface operations. Help the survivors. And send this transmission to all known systems," he added. A comm officer nodded. "Message ready, Admiral." Keon Vale looked out the viewport at the burning sky of Virelon 3. Then he said the words that would echo through galaxies. "Let it be known the age of silence is over." Down on the ground, the enslaved lifted their heads as the fires began to fade. They could hear human engines overhead, but not as conquerors, mine as saviors and among the ruins. Lura whispered the word that spread like a new hope. Humanity. The night ended not in darkness but in light. The sky that once brought pain now carried freedom. The Vengeance fleet remained above, watching, guarding. The galaxy had awakened, and this was only the beginning. The firestorm above. The skies of Virelon 3 were no longer red. They were burning blue and white. The storm of fire came from above, spreading across the night like waves of light. The Terran fleet had descended, no longer distant stars but roaring shadows above the cities. Every ship's thrusters painted the clouds in silver. Every strike shook the mountains. And on the ground, hope was reborn in the ashes. Lura ran through the ruins, her small hands covering her ears. The world trembled with thunder as explosions echoed in every direction. But these were not sounds of cruelty anymore. They were sounds of justice. Terran dropships fell through the smoke. Leaving blue trails like falling comets, the enslaved hid at first, afraid that another army had come to hurt them. But then they saw the symbol, the circle of earth, shining white on black armor. The Valkyrie troopers spread across the camps, their movements silent, their precision terrifying to their enemies. Each soldier fought like a machine, but every action had purpose. They didn't destroy for pleasure, and they liberated when they entered the slave pens. The guards screamed, but no scream lasted long. A Thalkren overseer tried to flee with his transport. Before he could rise, a beam of light tore through the engine. His ship exploded mid-air, the fire reflecting in the eyes of freed prisoners. For the first time they cheered, the sound trembling through the ruins, the sound of voices that had been silent for decades. Lura crouched near a fallen structure as one human soldier approached. His armor was dented and burned, but he knelt down slowly. Removing his helmet, he was young, his face calm yet tired, his eyes soft as he looked at her. "You don't have to hide anymore," he said gently. She stared at him, unable to speak. He extended his hand. "My name's Kane. Terran Ground Division," she whispered. "Lura," her voice almost lost in the thunder. He smiled faintly. "Stay close to me, Lura. You'll be safe." Above them, the battle still raged. The last of the Thalkren fleet refused to surrender. A massive dreadnought hovered in orbit, its hull black and covered with scars. It carried a weapon powerful enough to destroy a continent. In its bridge, General Vorthak glared at the surface below. His claws digging into the command rail, he roared, "If I fall, I'll take them all with me." His crew hesitated, fear in their eyes, but his voice was madness. "Charge the main cannon. Target the surface." In the Terran flagship, alarms flared. "Admiral," the officer shouted, "the enemy dreadnought is charging a planet buster." Keon Vale turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "How long?" "2 minutes, sir." Vale's voice was calm. "Ready all rail batteries and redirect the Vanguard squadron." Another officer hesitated. "If we engage that close, we'll take heavy damage." The Admiral's gaze hardened. "If that cannon fires, millions will die. We hold the line." The Vengeance fleet moved like a storm. Frigates and cruisers turned in unison, forming a shield wall before the planet. Hundreds of glowing barrels faced the dreadnought. The silence before the clash was unbearable. two titans staring across the void. Then all at once the stars themselves roared. Railguns fired in synchronized fury. Bolts of tungsten tore through space, lighting the darkness like lightning across a storm. The Thalkrin dreadnought returned fire. Plasma waves slicing through Terran hulls, one human cruiser exploded. Another began to fall into the atmosphere in flames. But they didn't stop, not even for a second. Every ship fought as if Earth itself watched from afar. Down below, Lura watched the sky shimmer. Each flash was a ship dying, each glow a sacrifice. Kane looked up too, his helmet's visor reflecting the chaos above. He whispered, "They're fighting for us," she asked softly. "Will they win?" He smiled sadly. "They have to." A shockwave ripped through the clouds. The Thalkrin dreadnought's cannon began to glow red, its massive energy core nearing full charge. On the Vengeance Bridge, the AI spoke urgently. "Critical time threshold reached, Admiral." Vale closed his eyes for a brief second, then spoke. "Order the Resolute to intercept. Tell them it's been an honor." The smaller Terran ship TSS Resolute broke formation. Its captain, a woman named Arya Lynn, smiled as she heard the command. She turned to her crew. "You heard him, let's make this count." The ship accelerated directly toward the dreadnought, its engines flaring brighter than ever before. The enemy tried to fire, but it was too late. The Resolute rammed straight into the weapon core, and the explosion that followed lit up the entire sky. The blast turned the darkness into gold. Every sensor went blind for a moment. Every voice went silent. When the light faded, the dreadnought was gone, only fragments remained, burning as they fell into the atmosphere on the ground. Kane and Lura watched as the sky became clear for the first time. The clouds turned blue, the ash falling like snow. Lura whispered, "They saved us." Kane nodded. "They saved everyone." In orbit, the Vengeance fleet drifted among debris. The voices of lost soldiers echoed through the comms. Proud, steady, fearless, Admiral Vale stood on the bridge, his reflection faint in the glass. He whispered quietly, "For the innocent." Then, turning to his crew, he said, "Prepare a message for the galaxy. The age of slavers ends tonight." The stand of humanity, the explosion from the Resolute still burned in the sky. Its light drifted across the orbit like the last breath of a hero. Every ship in the Terran fleet watched the fire fade, their radios filled with static and silence. Inside the Vengeance, Admiral Vale stood still, his eyes fixed on the light that marked the sacrifice of his people. The bridge was quiet. No one dared to speak after a long moment. The Admiral finally said, "Signal all ships." The communications officer nodded, her voice trembling. "Channel open, sir." Keon Vale stepped forward, his voice strong but heavy. "This is Admiral Vale of the Terran Vengeance Command. Today, we have ended the dominion of slavers on Virelon 3. Many of our own have fallen, but their deaths were not in vain. Let every world know humanity has returned, not for conquest but for justice across the fleet." Thousands of human voices listened in silence, and across the galaxy, hidden transmitters carried his words to systems both near and far. On distant planets, enslaved people stopped working as the broadcast reached them. They heard the voice of a man they had never seen, but his words carried warmth and power. He continued, "We remember the times when we were weak, when others helped us rise. Now it is our duty to do the same. Let it be known, those who enslave, those who destroy the innocent will face the wrath of Earth." The message ended, but the echoes of his voice spread like thunder through space. On the ground, Lura and Kane stood among the ruins. Smoke rose from broken towers, but sunlight pierced through the clouds for the first time. The air smelled of ash and freedom. Kane removed his helmet and looked at the horizon. "The Admiral's message is out," he said softly. "Every system will know what happened here." Lura stared at him, her small voice shaking. "Will they come again? The bad ones?" Kane smiled faintly. "Maybe," he said, "but they won't find us unprotected anymore nearby." Terran medics helped survivors. Engineers worked to restore water and power. The fleet had brought food supplies, medicine, and translators for the freed species. Everywhere humans walked, hope followed. In the Thalkrin command ruins, Admiral Vale himself arrived by dropship. He walked through the ashes where the enemy fortress once stood. His boots crushed fragments of metal and shattered armor. He stopped at the fallen banner of the Dominion, a symbol of oppression and cruelty. He looked at it for a moment, then spoke quietly. "Burn it." The soldiers obeyed. the fabric catching flame and turning to dust. As the smoke rose, Vale noticed a group of children watching him. Survivors. Frightened but curious, he knelt down, removing his gloves, showing his human hands. "You're safe now," he said gently. "No one will hurt you again." One small child, with wide golden eyes, asked, "Why did you come?" Vale's answer was calm. "Because we remember what pain feels like. Because no one should face it alone." High above, the Terran fleet reformed in orbit. Dozens of ships carried the wounded and the rescued. Some crews held funerals, releasing capsules of light into space. Each capsule shimmered before vanishing into the stars. A quiet song played through the comms, a Terran melody of remembrance as the Vengeance prepared to leave orbit. The AI announced, "All refugees secured." "Admiral," Vale nodded. "Plot a course for the next sector." "We're not done yet," the officer asked. "Next target, sir?" He replied, "Not a target, a promise. Wherever chains still exist, we'll break them." On the ground, Lura stood with Kane, watching the ships rise into the brightening sky. Their engines left trails of blue fire across the horizon. She whispered softly, "Will they come back?" Kane smiled. "If someone cries for help, they'll hear it." The girl nodded, tears glimmering in her eyes. Then the stars are safe again. As the last Terran ship vanished into the clouds, a new dawn began over Virelon 3. The people sang for the first time in generations, their voices rising with the wind, and somewhere in the cold vastness of space, humanity's fleet moved onward, silent, powerful, and unstoppable. The galaxy would never forget the day the Deathworlders stood against tyranny. And in every corner of the stars, one truth became legend. When the innocent cry, humanity answers. The dawn after fire. The fires of Virelon 3 slowly faded. Smoke drifted into the pale blue morning. The sky calmed for the first time in decades where there had been screams. Now there was silence where there had been fear. Now there was only peace. The Terran fleet had begun its evacuation. Ships hovered above the cities, lowering supplies, building shelters, and setting up hospitals. Human engineers worked beside alien survivors, showing them how to rebuild what was lost. The once broken world began to breathe again. Lura walked among the workers, her small hands clutching a packet of clean water. She watched as Terran soldiers helped rebuild the school where she once labored as a slave. Kane was beside her, carrying crates of medical gear. His armor was scratched, his face tired, but his eyes were calm. He smiled as he saw her watching. "You should rest," he said. She shook her head. "I want to help." In the distance, the ruins of the Thalkren towers were being taken apart. Terran drones melted the steel, turning weapons into tools, a symbol of what humanity stood for at not endless war, but renewal after fire everywhere people looked. They saw hope rising from ashes. Admiral Keon Vale stood on the observation deck of the Vengeance. Below him, the planet shimmered in morning light. He could see the rebuilt domes, the lights of camps, and the ships landing quietly. A soft voice spoke behind him. The AI interface. "Reconstruction of primary settlements at 53%, it said. Vale nodded. "Good." Then he asked quietly, "And the message?" The AI replied, "Transmissions received by over 70 planetary systems, Admiral." Vale's gaze hardened. "Then they know." He walked to the center of the deck, recording one final broadcast. "This is Admiral Vale," he said. "Virelon 3 is free. Humanity has fulfilled its duty here. To all worlds listening, if you live in fear, if your skies are dark, hold on. Because we are coming." The message ended, simple and clear. Back on the surface, Laura sat near a campfire with other freed children. They listened to human soldiers singing an old Earth melody. The words were strange to them, but the feeling was warm and kind. For the first time in her life, Laura smiled without fear. She looked up at the stars, whispering softly, "Thank you." Kane sat beside her, polishing his armor. He looked up too. "That's home," he said, pointing toward the brightest star. "Earth," Laura tilted her head. "Will you go back?" He smiled faintly. "One day, maybe. But until then, there are still others out there waiting." She nodded slowly. "Then I'll pray for them too." The campfire crackled, its light dancing across their faces. Above them, the Terran fleet prepared to depart, engines glowing softly. Each ship rose slowly into the air, reflecting the morning sun like silver birds. The people below waved, cheering, crying. Calling out blessings, the fleet didn't answer with words. Instead, every ship sent a bright pulse of blue light into the sky, a signal of farewell and of promise. Admiral Vale watched as his fleet aligned for jump sequence. He whispered to himself, "The galaxy forgot who we were, but they will remember now." With a soft hum, the fleet disappeared into the stars, leaving trails of light that hung in the sky like constellations. Lura stood watching until the last shimmer vanished. The world was quiet again, but it wasn't the silence of fear. It was peace. She turned to the horizon, where sunlight touched the rebuilt city. In that light, the future looked bright. The innocent were free and the chains were gone. Far away across the galaxy, the story of Virelon 3 spread. Whispers carried from ship to ship, from world to world. They spoke of the Death Worlders, the humans who came when all hope was lost. Some feared them, some praised them, but all respected them, because when others turned away, humanity stood firm, and so the legend began. Whenever the weak cried out, whenever tyranny rose again, the stars would tremble, because the galaxy had learned one truth it would never forget. When the innocent are enslaved, Earth will burn the skies for them.